The invisible problem, why you feel overlooked. There's a moment most men experience and but rarely admit. You're in a conversation. You're saying the right things. You're being polite, engaged, even interesting on the surface. And yet, something feels off. People don't lean in. They don't remember you. They don't feel your presence after you leave. You're heard, but not felt. And the instinctive reaction is always the same. Talk more, try harder, be funnier, be more expressive. But that only makes the problem worse. Because the real issue is not that you lack personality. It's that you've become predictable. You respond too quickly. You reveal too much. You react exactly how people expect you to react. There is no tension, no pause, no depth for someone to explore. And without that, there is nothing for the mind to hold on to. Here's what most men don't realize. Interest is not created by what is obvious. It is created by what is partially hidden. When everything about you is immediately accessible, there is no reason to stay curious. This is the invisible problem of 2026. You are always available, always expressive, always understandable. And because of that, you become replaceable. Not because you lack value, but because you don't control how that value is revealed. And until you understand this, you will keep trying to fix the wrong thing, adding more, when what you need is restraint. Because the moment you stop trying to be fully understood is the moment people start trying to understand you. The cultural lie of 2026, why openness is making you ordinary. You've been taught something that sounds right, but works against you. Be open, say what you feel, express yourself freely, and on the surface it feels honest, authentic, even healthy. But in reality, most men didn't become more interesting by following this advice. They became easier to read, easier to predict, and easier to forget, because there's a difference between authenticity and unfiltered exposure. In 2026, expression is no longer rare, it's constant. Everyone shares their thoughts instantly. Everyone reacts in real time. Everyone explains themselves before anyone even asks. And when everything is expressed, nothing feels valuable. This is the cultural lie. You were told that being more open would make you more attractive, but what it actually did was remove all friction. And without friction, there is no curiosity. Without curiosity, there is no intrigue. Without intrigue, there is no presence. Seneca warned that constant expression weakens judgment. Epictetus taught that not everything you think deserves to be said. And Marcus Aurelius wrote for himself, not for an audience. They understood something deeply uncomfortable. Not every truth needs to be spoken. Not every emotion deserves a reaction. Not every thought should be shared. Because power is not in what you express, it is in what you choose to withhold. And this is where most men lose their edge. They confuse transparency with depth. They confuse constant communication with connection. They confuse attention with respect. But respect doesn't come from how much people see of you. It comes from how much they can't fully access. Think about it. The most interesting person in the room is rarely the loudest, rarely the one explaining everything, rarely the one seeking validation. It's the one who speaks with intention, who reveals slowly, who leaves space between words, because that space creates tension, and tension creates attention. So the question is no longer, how do I express myself more? The real question is, what should I stop expressing? Because what you remove is what begins to define you. The interest paradox. Why trying makes you less interesting? There is a moment, subtle, almost invisible, where interest disappears. Not because you said something wrong, but because you tried too hard to say something right. This is the paradox most men never see. The more you try to be interesting, the more you signal that you need to be, and need is the fastest way to kill intrigue. You start explaining more than necessary. You add extra details that no one asked for. You fill every silence before it has a chance to breathe. Not because you're confident, but because you're uncomfortable with being misunderstood. And that discomfort leaks. It shows in your tone, in your speed, in your need to be validated in real time. But here's what happens on the other side. When someone senses that you need them to find you interesting, they stop trying to, because the mystery is gone. You've already revealed everything. There is nothing left to discover, nothing left to interpret, nothing left to feel. Epictetus taught that the man who seeks approval becomes a slave to it. And in modern terms, that means this: the moment you perform for attention, you lose control over how you're perceived. This is where most men fall into three silent traps. Over-explaining. You turn a simple thought into a long justification, hoping to be fully understood. But the more you explain, the less compelling you become. Overreacting. You respond instantly to everything: messages, opinions, emotions. But speed removes weight, and without weight, your presence feels light and forgettable. Overfilling silence. You speak to avoid discomfort, but silence is not your enemy. Silence is where interest is built, because silence does something words cannot. It forces the other person to lean in, to think about you, to interpret you, to stay engaged, without you doing anything. This is the shift. Interest is not created by constant output. It is created by controlled absence, not disappearing, but not being fully available either, not hiding, but not revealing everything at once. The interesting man understands something most people ignore. What you don't say shapes perception more than what you do. And once you see this, you stop trying to impress. You start choosing when to engage, when to speak, when to remain still. Because the goal is no longer to be interesting. The goal is to become someone people feel without fully understanding. And that changes the entire dynamic. Principle 1. Controlled presence. The power of deliberate expression. Most men think presence is something you have. In reality, it's something you control. Because presence is not about how much you say. It's about how intentionally you exist in a moment. And this is where the separation begins. The average man speaks to be understood. The interesting man speaks only when it adds weight. He doesn't rush his words. He doesn't react immediately. He doesn't feel the need to fill space. And because of that, when he does speak, people listen, not out of politeness, but out of instinct. Because his words carry something rare: deliberation. Marcus Aurelius practiced restraint even in chaos, not because he lacked thoughts, but because he understood that not every thought deserved expression. That is controlled presence. It's the ability to pause between stimulus and response, and choose your behavior instead of defaulting to it. But here's where most men misunderstand this. They think presence means being quiet, reserved, distant. That's not presence, that's avoidance. Controlled presence is not silence, it's precision. You still speak, you still engage, you still express. But every action feels intentional. Let's break it down in real situations. In conversation, instead of reacting instantly, you pause, just slightly. That pause signals composure. It creates weight. It forces attention. In disagreement, instead of defending immediately, you observe first. You respond only after you've processed, not after you've felt. In social environments, instead of trying to be seen, you allow yourself to be noticed. You don't chase attention. You let attention come to stillness. Because here's the truth: people don't remember everything you say. They remember how it felt to be around you. And controlled presence creates a very specific feeling: calm but alert, quiet but powerful, unpredictable but grounded. This is what makes someone difficult to ignore, not volume, not performance, but the sense that there is more beneath the surface. And when people feel that, they stay, they observe, they try to understand you, because you are no longer giving them everything. You are giving them just enough to want more. And that's where presence becomes influence. Principle 2. Internal density. Why depth is felt before it is seen. There's something you felt before, but probably never named. You meet someone who doesn't talk much, doesn't try to impress, doesn't dominate the room, and yet there's weight to them. You pay attention without knowing why. You feel like there's more to them, something you can't fully access. That feeling has a name: internal density. It's not about status, not about looks, not about how entertaining you are. It's about what exists beneath your surface, and most men today lack it because they are constantly external, reacting, posting, explaining, seeking. They live on the surface of their own identity. But the interesting man is different. He has thoughts he hasn't shared, experiences he hasn't explained, emotions he has processed without displaying. He is not empty space trying to be filled. He is contained depth. Seneca believed that a strong mind does not scatter itself in constant expression. It gathers, it reflects, it builds substance internally. And that substance becomes perceptible. Because people don't just hear what you say, they sense what you carry. This is the shift most men miss. You don't become interesting by adding more to your personality. You become interesting by increasing your internal weight. So what creates internal density? Independent thinking. You don't repeat what everyone else believes. You observe, question, and form your own conclusions. Emotional regulation. You feel, but you don't leak. You process, but you don't perform. Selective expression. You don't say everything you know. You say what matters, when it matters. Over time, this creates something powerful, a presence that feels stable, grounded, and difficult to read. And that difficulty is not confusion, it's intrigue. Because when people can't fully map you, they stay engaged, they listen more carefully, they watch more closely, they invest more attention. This is why depth is felt before it is understood. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to explain it. You simply need to build it and stop giving it away too easily. Because the man who carries more than he reveals will always be more compelling than the man who reveals everything he carries. The hidden destroyer. Emotional leakage. How you lose value without noticing. Nothing destroys intrigue faster than what most men never see happening. Emotional leakage. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It happens in small, almost invisible moments. You reply too fast. You explain too much. You react too emotionally. You seek reassurance without realizing it. And each time it happens, something shifts. Not visibly, but perceptibly. Because people don't just listen to your words, they read your emotional control. And when your emotions are exposed too easily, you become predictable. When you become predictable, you become safe. And when you become too safe, you stop being interesting. This is the part most men misunderstand. Being emotional is not the problem. Being uncontrolled is. Epictetus warned that when you cannot govern your reactions, you hand control to external events. In modern terms, if your mood changes based on how others respond to you, you are no longer leading the interaction, you are following it, and people can feel that instantly. Let's break down how emotional leakage shows up. Over-eagerness. You respond immediately to messages, attention, or interest. It signals availability, but also lack of restraint. Over-validation. You agree too quickly. You try to maintain harmony at all costs, but in doing so, you remove all tension. Overexposure. You reveal your thoughts, plans, and emotions too early, before they've had time to build weight. Each of these seems harmless, but together, they create a pattern. You become easy to read, easy to predict, easy to move on from, because there is no resistance, no uncertainty, no depth left to explore. Here's the shift. Mystery is not about hiding who you are. It's about not reacting on autopilot. It's about letting emotions exist without immediately expressing them. It's about choosing your responses instead of releasing them, because every time you pause instead of react, you regain control. And control creates something rare, stability. And stability is attractive in a world full of emotional volatility. The man who doesn't leak his emotions everywhere feels grounded, reliable, centered, different. And difference is what creates interest. So the next time you feel the urge to react instantly, to explain, to respond, to prove, pause. Because in that pause, you are either losing value or building it. Principle 3, strategic detachment, the calm that creates attraction. There is a specific kind of man people can't quite figure out. He's present, but not consumed, engaged, but not dependent, interested, but never chasing. And that balance creates something powerful. Tension, not confusion, not distance, but a quiet sense that he is in control of himself, regardless of the situation. This is strategic detachment, and most men misunderstand it completely. They think detachment means being cold, acting uninterested, withdrawing emotionally. But that's not detachment, that's avoidance. True detachment is not the absence of emotion, it's the absence of emotional dependency. Epictetus taught that you should engage fully with life, but never attach your peace to outcomes you cannot control. That means you can enjoy the conversation without needing it to go a certain way. You can feel attraction without needing it to be reciprocated. You can invest attention without needing validation in return. And when you operate like this, something changes. People feel it, because most interactions today are driven by subtle need for approval, need for response, need for confirmation. But when you remove that need, you become unpredictable in the best way possible, not because you're chaotic, but because you're unmoved by external pressure. And that creates intrigue, because people are used to controlling interactions through reactions. They say something, expect a response, they pull away, expect you to chase. They show interest, expect you to escalate. But when your behavior is not dictated by those patterns, they pause, they observe, they try to understand you. Because you are no longer reacting, you are choosing. And choice that creates power. This is why the most interesting man is often the hardest to read. Not because he hides, but because he is not easily influenced. He doesn't overinvest early. He doesn't overreact to shifts. He doesn't lose himself in the moment. He remains steady. And that steadiness creates a psychological effect most men never achieve. People start to adjust to you, not the other way around. Because when you are grounded internally, you stop chasing external control. And when you stop chasing and you start attracting, the final shift, becoming uninterested in being interesting. There is a point where everything changes, not gradually, but all at once. It's the moment you stop asking, how do I become more interesting? And start realizing, why do I need to be? Because as long as you're trying to be interesting, you are still performing, still adjusting, still measuring yourself through other people's reactions. And that effort, no matter how subtle, can be felt. People sense when you're trying, even when you hide it well, and trying creates pressure. Pressure to say the right thing, pressure to maintain attention, pressure to not lose interest once you've gained it. But the man who becomes truly interesting steps out of that game entirely. Marcus Aurelius never wrote to impress others, he wrote to align himself. And that is the shift, from external validation now to internal alignment. You stop performing, you stop proving, you stop needing to be perceived a certain way. And something unexpected happens. Your presence becomes effortless, because there is no longer a gap between who you are and how you present yourself. No overthinking, no over-adjusting, no over-explaining, just consistency. And consistency creates something far more powerful than attraction. Trust. Not the kind that is spoken, but the kind that is felt. Because when a man is not trying to be anything, he becomes difficult to manipulate, difficult to read, difficult to shake. And that stability creates a paradox. The less you care about being interesting, the more interesting you become. Because now your actions are not driven by outcome, they are driven by identity. You speak because it matters. You act because it aligns. You engage because you choose to, not because you need to. And that is what separates presence from performance. Most men spend their lives trying to build an image, but the man who becomes unforgettable builds himself and lets the image form naturally. The man who needs less becomes more. You don't become interesting by adding more words, more expression, more effort. You become interesting by removing what weakens your presence. The need to be understood immediately, the need to react instantly, the need to be validated constantly. Because every time you remove one of those, you create space. And in that space, your presence becomes heavier, calmer, more deliberate, more felt. Seneca believed that true power comes from self-mastery, not external control. And that's what this has always been about. Not becoming someone new, but removing everything that makes you predictable, reactive, and easy to forget. Because the man who controls himself doesn't need to control how others see him, and that is what makes him different. So this week, don't try to impress anyone. Instead, watch yourself. Notice where you react too fast, where you speak too much, where you seek approval without realizing it. And begin there. Because that's where the transformation happens. Quietly, internally, without anyone noticing at first, until one day, they do. And by then, you won't need them to.